have a second chance. I am not going to waste it.
Hey, everybody, this is TJR.
And this is Robert Kinsler.
And today we're going to talk about Justice League, the Snyder Cut on HBO Max. It premiered yesterday, and you and I watched all 4 hours of it.
We did. I watched it pretty much straight through. I think I took a quick break to get snacks or something, kind of like I was back at the theater.
So before we talk about our thoughts on the movies, and maybe I should mention here real quick, this is kind of different for you and I. We did talk about the Sgt. Pepper movie the last time we got together, but we were discussing a music-related movie.
That's right.
And normally you and I discuss music-related stuff, yet we are both comic book fans.
We are.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with the viewers, I used to be a comic book collector and stuff. And then when I went to college, I actually, sadly now, I sold the majority, not all, sold the majority of my comic books to help fund my college. Back in those days, I didn't really qualify for any scholarships. And my parents were not living nearby. So I had to take on a job at a gas station, and all that stuff. And I was doing whatever I could to get through those 4 years of college. So, but yeah, we've both been watched pretty much all of the DC Cinematic Universe and the Marvel Universe movies. I think we've pretty much seen them all.
Yeah, we've both been big fans. I read comics during the 70s, growing up as a kid, during the 80s. During the 90s, I started branching out into more alternative independent comics. And during but somewhere during the late 90s or so, I had to stop for financial reasons. I had to finally stop doing that. And I have never really quite gone back to the habit, although I do subscribe to DC Universe online now and read a lot of comics online. And will occasionally pick up something. But I think you and I are both kind of well immersed in probably Silver Age, Bronze Age comics and some of the modern age of the 80s, maybe, but we won't get too far into that.
Yeah.
But so let's talk a little bit of backstory. What were your memories and thoughts of the two films that led into what was the theatrical cut of Justice League?
Okay.
Which these would be Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. Any thoughts you want to share first on those two films?
Yeah, just maybe briefly in terms of my thoughts is I am a much bigger fan of 2013's Man of Steel than I am of Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, which came out in 2016. I have to tell everyone that I'm actually on board. I think Ben Affleck did a very admirable job of playing Batman, but I think it was more kind of the super dark tone of the movie, and I know that was intentional. I have read that Zack Snyder intended to make that movie a little bit darker and then have the movies get a little bit more hopeful after that. But I think how Batman went from like trying to kill Superman to all of a sudden he was ridden with guilt, kind of in a very quick span of time. I thought that was a little jarring for me. But I do have to say I like the actors in there, but yeah, the Man of Steel, I thought was a better film. And I know you had some issues with Man of Steel, particularly the end, but I don't know if you want to talk about those things or not here.
I thought Man of Steel showed a lot of potential. I was kind of divided on it. Like, I think that public reaction to that film was like 50-50, division, people who liked it and didn't like it. And I felt like I represented that. I felt completely split down the middle about that film. There were so many things that I thought, oh my gosh, this is so great and awesome. And there were so many things that made me go, what? And yeah, I was one of those people who had a problem with the whole scene of Superman killing someone at the end. I felt it was unnecessary. And I also read later that the screenwriter just wasn't going to originally have it in there, but added it just to manufacture drama. And that's what it felt like. It was just there to manufacture drama. It was unnecessary. I remember thinking that the big giant superhero fight at the end between Superman and the Kryptonian villains just went on and on and on and on and on to the point it got boring. Now, I rewatched it, and I'll mention Man of Steel is the only one of these films we're discussing today that I've actually watched more than once.
Mm-hmm.
Man of Steel, that fight scene wasn't quite the slog the second time around, and it was a little bit better for me the second time around. I'll admit to that. Batman v Superman, I remember we saw it together actually.
Mm-hmm.
When I first walked out of the theater, the 10-year-old in me was like, wow, I got to see Batman and Superman and Wonder Woman in a film together. Wow, that was so cool. And the 10-year-old in me was just so excited. But then after a couple of days, as I thought about the film, I began to think, wait a minute. This doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. Why was this, that, and that, and this? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, this is not a good film. And I saw it a couple of days later, and I felt that my assumptions were confirmed. This was not a good film. This was a really bad film. And I thought it was just relentlessly dark and joyless. And I just, and the more I thought about it, the more I disliked it. Now, there was the ultimate cut of BVS, which I think, I don't think you saw it, the extended version that came to digital and Blu-ray.
Yeah, I don't think I did see that.
Okay, I'm sure you'd remember if you did, yeah. And the extended cut improved the first two acts. The film made a bit more sense, but I still thought the third act was a mess of contradictions and things that just didn't make sense. And I won't get into all of that here.
Okay.
Because it's just
I'll have
too
to
much.
check that out. I'll have to at least try to check it out at least once.
It's on HBO Max now. You can watch it.
Okay.
It's there. So what were your thoughts on the version of Justice League that we got in 2017?
Probably kind of like your thoughts with Man of Steel, that there were things. Let me start off by saying the actors that portray the central characters, I think they're all well cast. I really like and connect with them. So a lot of times for me, if I like the characters in a film or a television series, that makes it much more palatable, if you will, for myself. So I like that part of it. But there were things, because I did rewatch it not too long ago, and I realized that there's times like there might be an intense fight scene, but all of a sudden one of the characters throws out kind of a silly comedic line, and I know they're trying to infuse, and we've seen that in some of the Marvel films too, especially the Avengers ones, where you're about ready to be killed or something, and you're kind of making little quips and stuff. I think some of that stuff seemed too manufactured and stuff. And also there wasn't enough time because there were so many characters that they're kind of introducing to you, and like Cyborg and stuff. And I thought they just didn't have the time to really fully get those interwoven into the story and make it work really well. It wasn't by any means, I don't think any of us, we would all agree that it's not a perfect film, but it is watchable.
I went into Justice League knowing about all the behind the scenes drama, of course, that Zack Snyder, we had to leave the film, of course, sadly, because of the tragic death of his daughter. Although the studio might have used that. I sometimes wonder if the studio just used that as just like, this is what we'll tell the public. But, they may have just said, we are scared of what you might do, because of the reaction to BVS was so bad, and the film did not do what they felt it should have done. And I think they got cold feet and got scared, because originally Justice League was going to be 2 movies, and then they said, no, it's only going to be 1 movie. And then they had a mandate. Once they had Joss Whedon doing reshoots and script rewrites, there was this mandate that it had to be a 2-hour movie. And both Zack Snyder and Joss Whedon agreed, this can't be a 2-hour movie. Yeah. This can't be. It has, please, it can't be. But they said, no, it has to be a 2-hour movie because we want to get enough screenings in theaters. I think it's a whole thing that I don't want to get too much into, because it's a whole rabbit hole you could fall down to of discussion. But I really think that basically Warner Brothers gave Joss Whedon a bucket of money and said, make this look and feel like a Marvel film. Do whatever you have to do. I
agree with that.
Make it fit into 2 hours. Given those restrictions, given the fact that he's working with a lot of pre-existing material by another director with a completely different sensibility, And given the fact that he's told it has to be 2 hours, I think he did the best job he could have done under the circumstances. I walked out, I can say for the theatrical version, at least I wasn't frustrated by Justice League in the way that I was frustrated by BVS. But I also thought that Justice League was basically, the best thing I can say about the 2017 version is that it's like a big budget episode of the Super Friends cartoon. It's fun. It was fun, but it's very vapid fun. And I've never watched it again, and I doubt that I ever will.
Yeah. I did. Like I said, I did see it again when all the talk about this extended Zack Snyder cut was coming out. I did rewatch it because it was on HBO Max. So
I should have.
But I'll tell you, and I know we're going to be talking about our feelings and thoughts about the new movie. But after seeing the new movie, I don't think I would ever have any likelihood that I would rewatch the 2017 version that Josh Whedon did. I just don't think I would probably rewatch that ever.
Yeah, I think that basically Josh Whedon did a job. Basically, he was given a job to do. And I think he kind of, I don't want to get into it. I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding Josh Whedon right now that I don't want to discuss. I want to keep it separate from this discussion. And I think all that controversy about his personal behavior has nothing to do with the end result of this movie. And I think he was given a job to do. I think that I'm pretty sure he was going through a divorce at the time the movie was at the time he was working on it. And I think he just needed the money. And, I could be wrong, but that's just my personal feeling. I think he just needed the money. He was going through a divorce. It was probably going to be pretty messy and ugly. And they gave him a bucket of money to do this. And he did it. And he just was a company man when he made it. And that's all I'm going to really say about that. So now let's talk about the Snyder Cut. And unless you have something else you want to say.
No. Yeah, I think that's what everyone's tuning in for.
Sure. Okay. And by the way,
the Snyder Cut.
Yeah. And by the way,
I think we both want to say is we're discussing this, 24 hours after it was released, via HBO Max. So we both watched it late last night. We're coming off probably less than a full night of sleep. But I have to say, my immediate thing I want to talk about is I love the look and flow of the film, especially the scenes with the Amazons and also the scenes in Kansas. And I know we're talking about spoilers, that one scene where you see Clark Kent with the butterfly in the cornfield and stuff. Boy, that's one of the most beautiful things I've seen in film. It recalled some of the magical moments I saw in some of the Lord of the Rings film, or even in 300, which Zack Snyder did back, like 15 years ago. Just some really beautiful moments in the film. And I know you'll have thoughts too, but just how we were able to see more of the characters fleshed out. Wonder Woman was more fleshed out. Cyborg definitely in his backstory and with his parents, and especially his connection and relationship with his father. And I love the music. We're both about the music, right? Tom Holkenborg, hopefully I pronounce his name right. I just love the new score too. I just think his music is fantastic here, and I think that adds some additional power to it. But there's so many. And maybe the last thing I'll say about something that really stood out is that whole sequence where Wonder Woman has that big fight scene in the beginning where she helps the group of civilians, particularly that group of school children, and that whole fight sequence and how it plays out. It's done artfully and also just a lot of tension and drama. It's just fantastic.
So my first question was going to be, what did you like the most about the film? And I think you told me the Amazon fight scene, the Wonder Woman scene,
right?
The music. Yeah. And was there anything else that you'd like to bring out? Because I'm going to talk about next what I liked about the film. And then we'll talk about, my next question is going to be, what did you like the least?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. No, and I know there are some things, but I think also the other thing I liked was the whole relationship with even Steppenwolf. His care, they show him as this real terrible, villain in the first version that we got, but here you understand some more of the motivations and some more of the things where he's had failure and how he's trying to be redeemed. Obviously he's a really dark terrible character, but even his motivations and what's driving him in the movie, those are more fully explored, and I thought that adds weight and power to the film as well. But yeah, looking forward to see what did you like most about it. And I know I mean, with 4 hours, there's lots to choose from.
Yeah. So I agree with you on some of the things you brought up, but some of the things you brought up also, there's one thing in particular you brought up that I'm going to bring up in the things that I didn't like about the film.
Okay.
But so first of all, what I liked the most about this film, I think, is probably the Flash. I really loved every scene with the Flash. Zack Snyder has this penchant for, I sometimes think, overkill, in my opinion, where he's trying to make everything a moment, a great moment, but there's not enough scenes in between, quiet scenes in between, to give you some balance. You know, if everything is loud in your movie, then it becomes boring. Mm-hmm. You got to have quiet, you got to have loud, you know, and you got to have stuff in between, peaks and valleys and hills. But with Zack Snyder, so much of it is just bombastic. You know, here's you know, like I shouldn't talk about this because this should be for what I dislike, but I loved all his artsiness with the Flash, especially that scene where he's saving the girl, which I guess we're supposed to think is Iris Allen.
And it is. I had read it as Iris West, yeah, right?
She's not named, but I loved his artsiness, the whole slow motion stuff, the song, the weird juxtaposition of the song while he's saving the girl, grabbing the hot dog and putting it in his pocket, and then finally ending up there with all the dogs there. You see, when dogs are scared, you got to have a meat snack for them. Yeah. I loved every scene about the Flash. I loved how they showed his powers.
And I agree with you. That was a great sequence there. I know I was trying to rush and get my thoughts in, but I agree with you. Yeah. And you see a lot more of the Flash in this movie than you did in the first one. And you do really, like you said, I think you're on board with that character now.
Liked him a whole lot better. Yeah. Also, Vic Stone, Cyborg, who was given, you know, like I said, but once again, 2-hour mandate. You know, I can't really criticize the theatrical cut for something like Vic Stone because 2-hour mandate. You know, if the theatrical version had been given 4 hours, I'm sure we would have gotten a lot more on Victor Stone. We didn't, though. But here we get a lot more about Victor Stone. He's a much better realized character. I agree with you. You know, Steppenwolf, better. We're actually given some motivation. We were given no motivation for this character in the original. Everybody's complaint about that character is that he seemed like a villain out of some video game. Exactly. It was just dropped in there, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
And even I saw that, and I don't play video games.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with you. It's like, why does he want to do this? Why does he have all this? You know, there was no motivation, like we're both saying, you know, and now it's there. And I would encourage people to watch this. Now you see all of that.
He's a dysfunctional. He basically has an abusive father, Darkseid, who's not really his father, but basically is his dysfunctional father figure. And he's desperate to win his approval.
Exactly. Well said.
Yeah. That's a pretty unit that there's a lot of people who can relate to that. So I like that. I liked the teamwork between the characters, something I wasn't expecting. There is a lot of great teamwork scenes, especially in the action. So yeah, that I liked a lot too. I liked the fact that this film had some humanity and some joy in it because BVS was so joyless. Mm-hmm. BVS felt like Zack Snyder. The only comics he ever read were Watchmen and Frank Miller's The Dark Knight series. And he said, this is what comics are, and that's what he made. It was so joyless. This film has some joy. It has some humanity.
Yeah.
I thought the Superman resurrection scene had more weight and was more powerful, something that surprised me. I thought all the action scenes like you did, the Amazons, everything was better. And the closing fight scene, the big confrontation at the end, had more stakes.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
The fight scenes were amazing.
They were.
So that's what I liked the most. And you're right. We're both coming off of seeing it last night. It was 4 hours to absorb. It's a lot to absorb. And maybe if we had waited a week, we might have more in-depth things to say. But
exactly, there might be more nuance. Yeah, and there's a lot. It's a lot to process because there, like you said, I think it's almost like he's a master painter. Every scene, he's trying to make it very dramatic, whether it's like a quiet moment or a really big, huge fight sequence. But there's a lot going on here, and I think my understanding is I know I read it somewhere that I guess Warner Brothers gave him an additional 70 million to kind of finish this and bring his vision to life. And I guess that's modest by today's blockbuster standards, but I think the fact that he's been able to make such a compelling, pretty impressive movie, from my perspective, that clocks in at just over 4 hours, is pretty impressive.
We should definitely talk about that. As much as I was frustrated by BVS and felt divided by Man of Steel, I always felt that even though I wasn't looking forward to his version of Justice League, even before all the behind the scenes drama with Joss Whedon and the reshoots and the rewrites, I always felt that they should have let him finish it. They should have let him make it. I felt the same way about Suicide Squad, which was another film where the studio got cold feet. Whatever the director's original vision was, they shelved it and brought in some other people to completely change it. That film was also a mess. In fact, it made BVS look like a masterpiece. Suicide Squad was so awful, so beyond any redemption. I think there needs to be an Ayer's cut of Suicide Squad so we can see the film that he wanted to make. I thought it was bold at first that when Man of Steel came out, I was impressed with the fact that Warner Brothers was willing to let someone go in such a completely different direction from Marvel, rather than just copy Marvel, which would have been the safe thing to do. Just copy Marvel, copy their formula. It's right there in front of you. They've shown you it works. Just do it. And I don't think any of us would have minded if the films had been entertaining, if that's all they did. But the fact that they let a director come in and do something completely different, but then they got cold feet. And then they got the cold feet with the director who was a great director who worked on Suicide Squad. But I know that what we watched in theaters was not the film he wanted to make, not by a long shot. And to me, that's even more interesting to think, what was the original vision of Suicide Squad by the original director? And so I was more interested in that than this, to be honest.
But now that you do this, it sounds like you'd be willing to give a revamped Suicide Squad another chance. It sounds like if they were gonna give that kind of the treatment that they did with this one, allow the director to implement their vision, should I say?
Well, I think it should happen. Like I said, there are different people in charge now. And of course, HBO Max, their inclusion, I think, helps, because there is no way that this 4-hour version would ever show in theaters that we saw now. The film, even if Zack Snyder had been allowed to make his film the way he wanted, even if he'd been given 2 movies, it still would have been different. Mm-hmm. And I really do have to think that as they made this new version, when people are saying release the Snyder cut, I never really believed there was a Snyder cut. I still don't. I think there might have been just a rough assembly cut of footage, but no real actual film that anybody could watch. There would have been no special effects finished, in my opinion. It would have just been a rough assembly of footage. So I think one of the things that this film has the benefit of is they had the 2017 version to look at, and that you can say with hindsight, okay, here's what we have to avoid. Mm-hmm. You've got, and there's no way, even though I think I read somewhere that Zack Snyder said, no, I didn't watch any of Joss Whedon's, I didn't watch the 2017 version. I don't believe that. I think he had to have seen it. I think he would have had to. I could be wrong, but that's what I think. That that they did use the 2017 film as a okay, here's let's look at this and let's learn and benefit from the hindsight. In the same way that the crew that worked on the Spanish version of Dracula, they would watch the daily rushes of the English version. They would see what they did and say, how can we improve on this? Yeah. I think that's there. And I don't think anybody, especially Snyder fans, want to consider that possibility. I could be wrong, but I think it's something that's hard not to consider.
Wow,
So,
interesting perspective. Yeah.
so let's go ahead. I want to get my claws out now.
Okay.
We're going to talk about. Do you want to tell me what you like the least, or do you want me?
Yeah, I don't have a lot. So why don't I start, and
Yeah.
then you can dig in.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Okay.
For me, what I was most disappointed about, TJ, was just the ending. I thought was a bit jarring because it kind of hit on this positive note where they defeat Steppenwolf, and we know that that there's still evil forces and things that may happen in the future. But then it basically starts what I assume would be the sequel to this movie, kind of sets it out with that whole scene with Batman and the Joker and stuff. And I just thought that the tone changed so dramatically. I just was like, I just found it. I mean, I have to say, and maybe it was because I'm 4 hours into the movie. Maybe I had the fatigue of like the intensity, but I didn't think that belonged in this movie. Maybe it belongs in the follow-up, and the whole, and then obviously then when you see that Superman comes in and he's not the Superman that we know and love. I just found that whole sequence, I don't know how long it was, 5 or 10 minutes. I just found that that was actually the one thing that stands out to me that I did not like, really.
Yeah, why is that there? It feels like that should be, if nothing else, if you have to include that, put it after the credits.
Yeah, maybe that would have been better. Yeah. And it was just because even the tone was different. They just, everything about it, and that whole thing about where Batman says he's going to get the Joker, and it just it just, I don't think it belonged here. Everything else in the movie, like I said, I was totally fine with. That would be my one complaint. Is it a deal breaker? Of course not. But that's the one thing, if you're really pressing me to the wall and asking, that's the one thing that that didn't jump out at me in a positive way.
It totally contradicts what the whole film was building up to. It completely contradicts everything. Yeah, it's like I heard one critic say, this should have just been a bonus feature. Yeah, it just like, it seems completely wrong. And it's clearly, I think, there to say like, okay, in the next film, we're going to go here for some reason, like I said, if it had been an after credit scene, but I don't think we're going to get a next film. I don't think we're going to get this cast together again. I doubt it. I mean, maybe it could happen, but I don't think we're going to get to proceed with, how this series wanted to be. I would like them to see them fix Suicide Squad, get it back to what it was supposed to be. Let us see what it was supposed to be. But I don't think, we're gonna come back to this where they were, because this was going to be a cinematic universe like Marvel, but then DC or Warner Brothers got scared, and they completely changed course on Suicide Squad. They completely changed course on Justice League, and then they just kind of threw up their hands, so I don't, to me, it seems pointless to put that in there, except as a closing after credit scene, where it doesn't upset the flow of the last 4 hours you've watched. Yeah, it's like it's like suddenly saying, oh, it was all just a hokey dream, when when it's completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you said it so well, and that's kind of, and I think that a lot of people will probably respond to it in that way too, that you've had this, like I said, if you're a fan and stuff, I mean, you've had this really amazing, experience watching this film, and then that comes in, and it just feels out of place, maybe is the way I might say it simply.
You clearly like the film better than me, because I don't feel like I had an amazing experience. I had a better experience than I anticipated, but because I wasn't anticipating much, and I also had a not so frustrating experience like I did with BVS, and maybe a bit less divided experience. Although I think that like I did with Man of Steel, although I think Man of Steel is a better film. Out of all these films, I still think Man of Steel is the best of them. So as far as what I didn't like, there were all these moments where I found myself asking why, where I got taken out of the movie. You know, when Martha is leaving the farm because she can't make the payments, why didn't Bruce Wayne help her sooner? I think he said that I'll keep an eye on her. I'll help. You know, I'll keep an eye on her. Why didn't he like, oh, she can't make the payments here. I've got money here. Let me just take care of it. Now, maybe you could say he was too driven to putting the team together and fighting this impending enemy that, you know, this impending darkness, you know, that was coming, that he got sidetracked and totally forgot. And maybe there should have been a line like, I'm sorry, I was just so focused on this that I totally lost track of everything else, you know?
Yeah, because at remember in the film, Alfred says, this is all you've been doing. You know, obviously he's not, Bruce Wayne hasn't been getting much sleep. He's been very obsessed with, like you said, with getting this team together. And he kind of has a feeling, Diana confirms it later, that this immense evil is on the horizon. But I mean, of course I'm making excuses. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, that's my excuse for it. But it's just like, I keep thinking I'm pretty sure I remember he said something in Beavis, like near the end, like, I'll keep an eye, I'll watch out for her. You know, but he, you know, it's like, and maybe she doesn't tell him, but you'd think with his wealth and his influence, he might find out. He'd keep an eye out on her because, you know, he was Superman's mother, and he feels all this guilt for what he did. I don't think his guilt was ever really played up as well as I think it should have. I think his guilt should have been better played. Also on the subject of Batman, why does Bruce Wayne, Batman, reveal his identity to so many people? You know, why did he show up at the Iceland? To me, that just seems so anti-Batman from everything I've ever read. He would not reveal his identity to so many people. Why does he show up to the Icelandic village as Bruce Wayne? I would think that Batman would be more stealth. He'd show up as someone else. He'd at least wear a disguise. And he'd find a way to confront Arthur Curry secretly. Now, he may reveal to Arthur Curry who he is, but as they're walking around, this happened in the 2017 version, this happened in this version. Arthur Curry calls him Batman and Bruce Wayne out there in public where anybody could hear it. I mean, basically, I have to assume that word's going to get around this Icelandic town that Batman is Bruce Wayne. It's no wonder that we have this sequence at the end, one of the many epilogue sequences, where Lex Luthor tells, you know, Deathstroke, do I have the right name right? Okay, I'm sure some comic fans will correct us. But tells him, yeah, Batman's Bruce Wayne. Well, no wonder it got out. Yeah, you know, you only had people shouting it out loud in this Icelandic town. You know, I'm sure word got out somehow. Also, I didn't like the "What are your powers? I'm rich" in the 2000 version. I didn't like it in this version. You know, Batman's powers are not that he's rich; it's his mind. That's his power. His mind, his ability to think.
I was talking about that. Those are a couple of the little things that they. What do they call it? Where you break down the fourth wall, where you kind of like you're saying, you're taken out of the film. Those are the kind of things that can do that. Great films never take you out.
Exactly. You know? They never take you out that much, or very little, or they're so good at distracting you that you forget.
Right.
And so yeah, there was that. Lois Lane blows Superman's identity in the 2017 version, and she does it here. You know, when she sees, you know, the Superman flying there after he's resurrected, and Clark, she calls him Clark in front of the military guy and the cop. She does it in both versions, and I thought they'd at least correct that, where she doesn't call him Clark. You know, they could have dubbed in having her say Kal-El, you know, Superman. You know, Lois is smart enough to know to call Superman when he's not wearing glasses. Yeah, exactly. She's smart enough to do that. So yeah, I just, you know, it's like dumb things like that bothered me. You know, then, and again, I'm going to talk about some of Zack Snyder's tendencies to almost want to make everything seem important, like, you know, using slow motion and ethereal or sad, slow music, you know, to try to highlight something and say this is important. Yet he does it like when Vic Stone is playing football, and we slow-mo on a scorecard. Why is this important? You know, you don't know sometimes what is really supposed to be important when he's exaggerating so much. He's using slow motion music to make something that really isn't important, to make it feel like it should be important. Why is that important? So much pomp and circumstance to lighting this torch thing, done effectively well in like the Lord of the Rings, where they light the whole scene where they light the different pyres on the different mountains to send a signal, done effectively well there. But here it just seems like, come on, get on with it. You know, there's this impending danger. Why so much pomp and circumstance to light a fire? You know, things like that. I just couldn't help but think about these things. One of the ones that hit me the most was there's a whole sequence there where Victor Stone's father explains to him just how powerful he is, how much he can do, how he could control the world's economies if he wanted to. And I kept thinking to myself, why give an angry teenager so much power? That seems so fundamentally dumb to do that. I mean, I guess they had to explain how he could do what he does at the end, because without that, I mean, how does he do that? So I guess you have to do that. But at the same time, I can't help but think, couldn't you have found a better way to get there? Because it just seems so dumb to give an angry teenager so much power. And, you know, like I said, that took me out of the movie. One thing that I'm going to talk about was we both liked the scene with Wonder Woman where she deals with the terrorists. I love that scene in the 2017 version. I liked it here. But there was one thing that really bugged me. You know, Wonder Woman is a warrior. She's an Amazon warrior. So yeah, when she's throwing around these terrorists, hurling them against the walls, you know, 100%, you know, I don't see any conflicts with her character there. You know, she's trying to save these people, and these people are ruthless. You know, I'm surprised she didn't bounce some of those bullets back from that one guy who tried to shoot all those people back to him, you know. But then, and I have to put my cup down here for this demonstration, but then she does her bracelet power to the main terrorist guy. And she explodes him through the wall. All of this huge debris of the building come flying out at the police that are out there. She knows they're out there. And I could understand Wonder Woman just super speeding up to him and pushing him through the glass wall, because it's only going to be him that gets hurt, really. But this whole using that power like that, the overkill of that. And this is another thing about Zack Snyder. He will do, you know, sometimes for him, the needs of the needs of this looks cool outweighs the needs of this makes sense. Because while Wonder Woman, if she was dealing with like a massive enemy like Steppenwolf, she'd do that power, boom, you know, and you know, no problem. But for this terrorist guy, I could understand her, you know, super speeding up there and pushing him out the window. You know, he's only going to hurt himself. But to do it the way she did it, where it explodes the wall out, sending all this dangerous debris to all these police officers, you know, that are out there trying to help. And, you know, Wonder Woman is smarter. She would say, no, that's overkill. I'll hurt all those innocent officers. You know, I'll hurt them. So no, she should just push them out. But Zack Snyder, a lot of times he thinks that looks cool and he forgets, but wait, that doesn't make sense. So that was something that the moment I saw it, I was like, what? You know, that's overkill. So these were some of the things I didn't like. And of course, you brought it up, the weird tacked on dream ending. I think it could have just ended with just this, you know, that I don't think it should have even been there. I think they should have excised that completely, made it a bonus feature like that you could have clicked onto. If you were going to have an ending credit scene, it should have just been the John Jones scene with the Martian Manhunter at the end. But also, and now this is not a dislike or a like thing. But did you sense something weird about that scene? I kept watching that scene and I kept thinking, that looks like Ben Affleck, but it doesn't look like Ben
Yeah.
Affleck.
No, I saw it first and it didn't look like him at all. I mean, I'm
At
like,
times it looked like George Clooney almost.
yeah, I wasn't really sure. So was that not Ben Affleck in that scene then? And they did something digitally? I don't know.
And did you notice his voice didn't sound right?
Yeah, I
I
noticed
have
that.
a feeling that that wasn't Ben Affleck. I have a feeling he didn't want to come back and do it.
Wow.
And I have
Okay.
a feeling that they did like they did with Rogue One,
Hmm.
with General Tarkin,
Hmm.
where because the actor Peter Cushing has passed away,
Right.
and I hope I got that right. If I
Yeah.
didn't, I'm sorry, but I hope they got that where they found an actor of a similar height and build, and then did all the digital stuff on the face, put all the
Yeah.
little spots there that they do
Yeah.
with the scanner cameras, and then deep faked him, deep
Yeah.
faked Ben Affleck. I have a suspicion they did that. Now that's not a dislike, that's not a like, but there was something not right
No,
about that.
yeah, the word you would use is there was something amiss there,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. No, good point. I didn't bring that kind of stuff up, but yeah, no, I think if we're getting into the weeds like that, yeah, no, I agree with that. No, and I think we both are 100% on board our feelings on that end sequence there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something I noticed. It was unusual, but yeah,
Hmm.
I think that whole dream sequence should have been taken out.
Yeah,
And I think if anything, I think the film had a good ending, and then suddenly, boom, we're back in this apocalyptic landscape where Darkseid has taken over.
yeah.
Yeah, that should not have been there. Um, yeah, and basically use the other scene as an ending credit scene, the scene with Martian Manhunter.
Okay.
Okay, so that is what I didn't like. Um, General thoughts on the film. Um, do you want to go first, or shall I?
Yeah, yeah. I think I've kind of covered them. I think maybe what I'll say, to round out my feelings on it is the things such as heroism, freedom, sacrifice, some of these classic comic book themes that I really related to. I think those things are done here with Zack Snyder's style. His very visual, stunning kind of the style and tone he can bring to a film. Um, and I think that those overall, especially outside of this final scene we just talked about, I think that those work for me in the movie. And overall, I'm looking forward. I know it's a serious commitment of time, but I do plan on watching this again to
Mhm.
hopefully see the things that I missed the first time, including some of the things you just told me about.
Mhm. I think that it was a less frustrating experience than I expected. It was a better experience than I expected. I think this film should have been serialized. All the different parts, part one, part two, part three. I think there were like 6 or 7 parts. I really think this should have been serialized at the very least as 4 1-hour episodes. And that ending tacked on scene, the dream sequence at the end, felt like I turned the channel and watched an episode of something different, another episode somewhere else later in the series. I hate to keep harping on it, but I think this would have been better if it was serialized. I think it would have probably flowed better. At times, I know you seem to feel like it flew, but at times it felt a bit slogging for me. At times, still, it was a better experience than I expected. But the last thing I want to say is that at the end of the day, this film and the one that preceded BVS, having Superman die shouldn't happen in your second appearance of Superman. It should happen like years into the series, into the series. Having Flash discover he can do this amazing thing shouldn't happen in the first Justice League movie. It should happen in the fourth or fifth Justice League movie. This whole movie should have been Endgame. It should have been like 10 years in, or at least 5 years in.
Mm-hmm.
To a certain extent, in my opinion, nothing is, I think they did as good of a job as they could have done, but this should have been a film. This should have been like the fourth or fifth Justice League movie, not the first one. There's too many great revelations. There should have been more buildup to all of this. And this is all because I don't blame Zack Snyder. I don't blame Joss Whedon. This is because Warner Brothers wanted to fast forward to the payday. They weren't willing to put in the time that Marvel put in to get to the first Avengers film. and the second one and the third one and Endgame. They weren't willing to put in the time to build up these characters over several films, over dozens of films, even, like they should have done. You know, instead, they wanted to get to the payday. And that is why they failed when we got to the 2017 Justice League film, why it was just this obligatory thing. You know, it had as much impact as a Scooby-Doo movie, you know, Justice League 2017. And while this is, it can't help but be a better experience. I guess it could have been worse, but it can't help but be better because they've got more time to develop the characters, you know, which helps a great deal. Mm-hmm. So that's why I say it's better than I expected. But at the end of the day, this should not have been the first Justice League movie. This should have been at least 4 to 5 movies in, with lots of films in between dealing with these characters, so we can really build up the characters, have real stakes, have a real sense of investment. And that's the last thing I'll say.
Okay. No, and I think very compelling argument on your side. I think we both can agree that we thought that this was a better movie than the first one, definitely. Mm-hmm. And also, you know, in my, at least for me, it delivered kind of on the promise of the first movie more fully.
So those are our thoughts, everybody. Let us know what you think. Leave a comment. Please click like, click subscribe, smash the bell notification icon so you can know when new videos are released. And once again, different for us. We're talking something non-music related. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and hopefully you want to see us do more of this. Let us know. Everybody, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.